Gadi Ezra holds an unparalleled perspective on war, as both a human rights attorney on one hand and a soldier in the Israeli Special Forces on the other. He is currently advising the defense establishment on international aspects while pursuing his PhD in law. Gadi is a Forbes 30 Under 30 honoree and holds already 3 law degrees from both Tel Aviv University and the NYU School of Law, specializing in public law and human rights. At NYU, Gadi was the first Israeli chosen to deliver the convocation speech on behalf of his classmates. Previously, he served as a legal advisor at the Israeli Ministry of Foreign Affairs and was selected to clerk directly for the State Attorney of Israel, Mr. Moshe Lador, where he participated in cardinal decision-making processes. Drawing from his personal experience as well as his strong academic and practical background as a human rights lawyer, Gadi examines the complexities of applying the laws of warfare in actual combat. So with that, please welcome Gadi.
All right. Can everybody hear me? All right, so good afternoon, and thank you for coming. We were walking in the building, and it's a beautiful, beautiful building environment and a lovely winter day in the city. However, I'm here to talk to you about a less pleasant issue. I'm here to talk to you about war. War, in one word, really, if I could sum it up, is hell. War is the most chaotic and unexpected scenario you can find yourself in. And we, as a Western society, we have a very interesting way to regulate this terrible phenomena called war. We call it the laws of war, the laws of armed conflict. For those of you who do not know, the laws of war are basically a bunch of rules anchored in different treaties, international laws, domestic one, and customs, and they define the do's and don'ts within war. They do not explain to the commander how tactically or strategically operate within war, how to maneuver with the tanks or with the F-35s, but rather they define the general moral guidelines of how one should behave within this terrible phenomena. I had the pleasure of dealing with war issues for the past 12 or 13 years of my life from different angles. And as time went by, I started to ask myself some questions. What is the purpose of these laws? Is it to protect innocent lives during combat, like most of us would have think? Or perhaps from a mental health perspective, to make sure that soldiers would not engage in horrific sins which will corrupt their souls? Others, cynical scholars, may claim that those who shaped the laws of armed conflict did so in a way which will help them, or their nations, to win wars against less powerful actors, also known as terrorist organizations. Yet the truth is a bit more complicated than that, and I simply know this because I have been there. As I was kindly introduced, my name is Gadi, and I hold a dual perspective on war, both as a professional, as an academic, but more importantly as a combat soldier who knows how the translation of these laws looks like in real life, in real combat. And today I'm going to make a very simple argument to you. A strict adherence to the laws of armed conflict might put you on the right side of the law. You are not going to be indicted. Mazel tov. Yet, it might lead you to partake in some horrific scenes. In order to avoid those scenes, yet to fulfill your mission, you would occasionally have to apply higher standards than the legal ones. And if I may add, the low standard legal ones. And in order to prove that point to you, I would like to share with you my personal story from Gaza. But before we begin, 2 main assumptions for this talk. Number one, the scenes that I'm going to describe to you today are ones that I have sensed through my own subjective senses. So other people who were among those scenes might describe them a bit differently. And number two, the views that I'm going to share with you today are my own personal views, and they do not represent any governmental office or other entity whatsoever. Okay, so now we can begin. So to talk to you about my Gaza experiences, I would like to take you back precisely 10 years ago, December 2008. The State of Israel is about 3 years after the disengagement plan, in which we evacuated any Israeli presence from the Gaza Strip. 2 years after Hamas took over the Gaza Strip, the terrorist organization of Hamas took over the Gaza Strip. And let's say that since Hamas took over, the State of Israel has suffered thousands of rockets being fired at our villages in southern Israel. I was a civilian at that time, finishing my 3 years of mandatory military service. I was actually a 1L student, my first year in law school, my first semester. And it's a Saturday night, and I'm finishing a terrific weekend in my parents' house, which is located down south in an area already bombarded by Hamas. And I'm driving my 95 blue Fiat right inside Tel Aviv to begin in Al Riki Law School. And at some point during the entrance to Tel Aviv, I'm receiving a very weird phone call from an unidentified number. I'm making the mistake, and I'm answering this phone call. And on the other side of the line, there is an automatic message that basically asks me to urgently arrive at my unit the following morning. Today we are very smart after 3 different campaigns in Gaza. But back then, no one really believed we were going to war inside Gaza. So the next day, my teammates and I, brothers from different mothers, we are arriving at our unit, and we're really happy to see each other. It's like a reunion, a lot of high fives, a lot of hugs, a lot of coffee. But very quickly, we're heading down south to an army base in which we spent the next week. During that week, we had a pretty clear routine. During the days, we were training. We were simulating the different scenarios we thought we were going to experience inside Gaza. Yet during the night, we were waiting. We were waiting for the final call to invade Gaza. Each night we came prepared with our gear, with our vests, grenades, magazines, rifles, some candy bars for the rough times. And by that I'm going to say I'm not going to glorify war to you, because that's going to be disrespect to your intelligence. Yes, we did make sure we have enough candies for the rough times. It's essential sometimes as other means. And we would stand in front of our commander, and he would come and he would look at us and just say that every night that everything is postponed in 24 hours. The invasion is postponed in 24 hours, just like that. Night after night after night after night, which lasted to a nerve-wracking week. I want you to think about that feeling for a second, about a civilian that was ripped out of his nice espresso routine in Tel Aviv University, and is about to enter a territory in which he could lose his life. And he doesn't know when this is going to happen. I'm not sure the Geneva Conventions nor the Hague regulations take these emotions into account. And after 1 week precisely after, it was Saturday night again, we were told that tonight is the night and we're invading Gaza. We were transported to another military base, this time much, much closer to the border. And there we got an emotional speech from a very, very high-rank commander in the paratroopers. His speech was mainly focused on Zionism, ideals, morals. And let me tell you, if there's one thing that I learned after 3 years in the military, is that if a commander's speech is primarily focused on Zionism and ideals and less about the particular mission, this means things are really bad. And that was the feeling. I was terrified. If anyone will tell you they're not terrified before going to battle, in our case, to Lebanon, to Gaza, wherever, they're either liars or crazy. I was terrified. The walk towards the Gaza Strip starts about 1.2 miles in Israeli territory. And we are carrying an enormous amount of weight on our back. I'm carrying about 110 pounds on my back of food, water, ammunition, camouflage equipment, different stuff we usually take in with us. And during our walk, we are accompanied by literally a wall of fire, being shots from vessels, helicopters, artillery, everything in order to make sure that we are going to arrive at our destination the safest way possible. And our mission was pretty clear. We were told we needed to locate ourselves in front of the first line of houses of the Gaza Strip. Once you're going to get there, we were told, you need to camouflage yourself, become invisible, and constantly spot terrorists in that first line of houses. Once you're going to spot a terrorist, you're going to be allocated with a helicopter or a drone above your head. And the helicopter or the drone needed to help the terrorist to reunite with God. So the purpose was pretty clear. We needed to make sure that the surface is safe for the rest of the forces that needed to invade that territory about 48 to 72 hours later. And After around 2 hours of walk, we were arriving at a large sand dune. Now, we knew it in advance because we had the maps and intel and everything, but only when we got there have we realized that we are in a Jewish village that was evacuated in the disengagement plan. We were literally the first Israelis to go back there. I vividly remember still the old basketball court of the village, some of the public facilities. Some people find mezuzahs in the ground, in the sand. Yet, we did not have time for any nostalgia because we did not know two things. We did not know if the terrorists that were only 200, 300 yards away from us at that point has an ability to see us at night. But more importantly, we did not know if they have sniping ability. So we were literally in a race against time to camouflage ourselves the fastest way possible before the sun comes up and we're all going to end up like ducks in a shooting range. And after additional 2 hours of work, our team is creating what we call in the military slang a camouflage position. This is basically a fake artificial territory that we're creating. It is no larger from, what is your name, sir?
Fred.
From where Fred is to?
Lidor.
To Lido. And in that territory, which looks like it's an integral part, like another layer of the sand in the dune, you would have 6 to 7 IDF soldiers. They would sit inside, and inside they would have to eat, to drink, to communicate, to do what human beings are doing every 3 to 4 hours, together with your teammates, which can create quite amusing scenes sometimes. And again, conduct the mission. Constantly look for terrorists. Once you're spotting a terrorist, report to the helicopter, the drone, and then close a circle of fire, how would we call it in the military slang. And it did not take long before we have faced our first scenario in Operation Cast Lead. Around day 2, we're spotting on the 3rd floor of a building a terrorist. He is looking for IDF soldiers in the horizon. He's clearly on an intelligence mission. He has no idea we're seeing him because we're invisible to him. But we are preparing ourselves for an engagement. We're talking to the pilot above our head. Now, I can tell you as a lawyer now that if we had the Geneva Conventions right there with us in that camouflage position, they would have told us we are doing the exact right thing. The reason is a core principle in international law called the principle of necessity. The principle of necessity basically says that weakening the other party to an armed conflict is a legitimate cause. As a matter of fact, the only legitimate cause. Yet, you would all agree with me that targeting a Hamas terrorist in the middle of an operation in Gaza, for me, is a legitimate cause, right? Yet life, as they tend to be, were a bit more complicated than that, because right next to that terrorist, we're spotting a woman. We're looking at them for over an hour. And we're concluding that she is not a terrorist, that she's a civilian. Now, the laws of armed conflict do acknowledges the fact that civilians can find themselves at the midst of the war zone as well. And another interesting principle called the principle of distinction says that civilians are immune from any attack unless they are directly participating in the hostilities themselves, DPHing. Yet, this woman was not DPHing. She was probably there against her will, or at least we could not prove that she was voluntarily there. And there we were realizing we're facing a true scenario of a human shield. Now, I do not have a sniping ability in my team. Even if I would have, I wouldn't take a shot with a sniper probably, although it's very accurate and precise, because I wouldn't want to give away my location due to operational reasons. I'm on an undercover mission. I do have a helicopter above my head. The helicopter has a very lethal missile that can go right through the window, and if it's not clear, take them both. Does this mean that the terrorist shall enjoy the immunity granted to the woman according to the laws of war? Of course not. Because of another interesting principle in international law, which is called the principle of proportionality. The principle of proportionality basically says the following thing, and be with me because it sounds like an equation in algebra. You're smart people, but try to hold on. A military action is forbidden. A military action is forbidden if the collateral damage it causes is excessive to the military advantage. If the collateral damage it causes is excessive to the military advantage. Now, putting that in a human being's language for a second, what the laws of armed conflict expect me to do, a 22 years old kid, hungry, tired, and missing my girlfriend, is to evaluate, hypothetically, how many points will I gain from targeting that terrorist, and hypothetically evaluate how many points will I lose from targeting that woman. And if the number that I'm receiving is positive, I did the right thing, and if not, I might just perhaps did a very, very bad thing. Good luck. I want to pause for a second and ask you, what do you think the right answer is? Let's make a quick poll in the room. Who thinks that under these circumstances, where I have a terrorist right in front of me, he's holding an AK-47, a Kalashnikov, and he's looking for IDF soldiers, and I have a woman right next to him, under these circumstances, I should not take the shot?
Okay, can I ask, why does the shot need to be taken?
Because my mission as a soldier there is to make sure that no terrorist is surviving and harming the rest of the forces that are going to invade to that territory later.
Well, the question is, it seems like we're missing information because you're only given one specific means of neutralizing that person, and we don't really have the information about the strategic value of that person. Right?
Well, the war is the kingdom of uncertainty,
Yeah.
and I'm not missing details for purpose, but rather trying to give you the true, authentic way you would look at it on the ground. Now, let me ask you another question. Those of you who would take the shot, may I ask you to raise your hand, please? All right. Those of you who would take the shot, would you change your mind if I will tell you that she held a baby in her arms? You wouldn't change your mind because she did.
Oh, no.
You would.
Wouldn't.
You would not. You would not take the shot.
I still would take a shot.
Okay. I saw some of you kind of like feeling uncomfortable when I added the baby component to that equation. And the truth is that terrorists are doing that on purpose. It's a known mean by them. Now, I remember sharing that scenario with a colleague in a Red Cross conference in Geneva once, and he was less struggling than some of you here. His answer was a straightforward, of course you can take the shot. What's the problem? And you know what? Legally speaking, he might be just right. Guys, the laws of armed conflict has acknowledged sometimes far way excessive collateral damage than just a woman and a baby. Sometimes 5, sometimes 10, sometimes 15 people. Depends on the military advantage, of course, in a given case. But the equation is relatively simple. Yet, I got to tell you that once you're there on the ground, things tend to look a bit more complicated. Because, come on, let's face it. This woman is not collateral damage. She's a human being. She has a face. She has a name. She has hopes, aspirations, past, present, perhaps a future, friends, family members. I can see one of them in her arms. She's not just collateral damage, she is a living soul. So we've decided to wait. We've decided to wait for a time window in which she would be allowed to go to the restrooms or whatever she was allowed to do. And some of us still do remember the missile go right through the window and her running away from the building hysterically with the baby in her arms. We know she survived because she ran on her feet. The terrorist is no longer with us if you're concerned. But did we apply higher standards than the legal ones? Yes. Did we make our lives more complicated? Yes. However, can we sleep better at night? Yes, we can. Absolutely. After 4 whole days in that camouflage position, 4 whole days, we were told that the valley between where we were and the first line of houses was already occupied by the IDF. And the IDF has created what we call in the military mignan in Hebrew. Mignan is basically a safe zone framed by sand batteries in which vehicles, tanks, jeeps could park safely. Soldiers could rest there safely as well. Usually supply of food and ammunition would be transported to the mignan. It's like a must-go-through point before things are being distributed to the soldiers on the battlefield. Bodies of dead soldiers would be moved to the mignan first and only from there sent to burial in Israeli territory. So we were told, go to the mignan and wait for your next assignment. We were also told do not leave the mignan under any circumstances. Because if you're outside of the mignan with no permission, the presumption is that you are a terrorist. And if you're a terrorist, according to the laws of war, you're a legitimate target. Yet, while we were there, at some point, the soldiers who are guarding the mignan are seeing an IDF soldier walking outside of the mignan towards them. He's walking towards them, and they're screaming at him, "Hey, what do you do here? Please identify yourself." And the guy ignores them and continues to walk. "Brother, please stop. Who are you?" They scream at him again. And he continues to walk. 30 meters, 25 meters, 20 meters. Now, because he looked so good, he looked like a poster of the IDF rather than a skinny, sandy, muddy soldier like we were at that time. They thought he's from a particular engineering unit called the Yahalom, which is the equivalent word in Hebrew for diamond. So they're reaching out to the guy for the third time. And they're asking him, "Hey, are you from Yahalom by any chance?" And the guy stops. He looks at them and he says, Yahalom, aywa, Yahalam, in Arabic. That was a Hamas terrorist. He was disguised as an IDF soldier. He had ammunition all over his body. And his plan was to enter the mignan and conduct what would have probably been the most horrific suicide attack our country has ever known in our war history. I wouldn't be standing here if this guy would have replied in Hebrew. He was probably excited, drunk, drugged, whatever he was, and he mistakenly replied in Arabic. Now, we were furious. We were mad at the soldiers who guarded us. Why are you conducting this Q&A session with, what are you, Oprah? Come on, guys. This is Gaza. It's not a joke. Do something more tangible. Shoot to the air. Shoot to the leg. Something. Even now, when I started to describe that scene, some of you looked at me and said, that's not right. It's not okay. But you know what? It actually took us a very, very short time to realize that they set a great example for us and helped us to save lives. And I'll explain in a second. Our next mission was to locate ourselves in an apartment which is in the neighborhood we just looked at 24 hours ago. Go to that apartment, we were told, and look over a valley which contained a lot of rocket launchers. Once you're going to spot a rocket launcher, you would be allocated with a helicopter above your head. You have to report to the helicopter, and the helicopter would close a circle of fire, as we would do in the military slang, as I described before. So we're getting into that apartment, and we are spotting the kitchen as the most strategic room in the house with the best view, and we're working in the kitchen. We're not cooking. We're playing with shades and lights, and we're creating an illusion. It doesn't matter how we do it, but if you would look from the outside, you would see a dark, empty room, while from the inside, you would have 3, 4, 5 IDF soldiers looking right at you. While we were there, we were also accompanied by a younger team of paratroopers. That team's sole mission was to constantly look at the entrance to the apartment to make sure no terrorist is coming and slaughtering us while we're not paying any attention. So there we were, 2 teams in one apartment. But at some point in the middle of the night, that team is getting called to conduct a different mission, which is fine. War is a very dynamic scene. So they're standing in a line, and they're starting to march away from us. Now, you need to understand something about the walk in war. Unlike your initial intuition, the walk in war could be extremely, extremely slow because of 2 main reasons. Number one, the physical conditions. You are terribly tired, you're hungry, you're carrying an enormous amount of weight on your back. But number 2, and more importantly, because of operational reasons. Every few hundred meters, the soldiers who are leading the force would stop. They would go down on the ground, and they would look for terrorists on the horizon silently. After 60, 90 seconds, while they're making sure there are no terrorists in the area, they would signal to the people at the back of the column that the surface is clear and they may proceed. While they're doing that, the people at the back of the column, technically, they need to go down on their knees as well and secure the column to the sides and the back. Now, this, some would describe it a bit Hollywoodic, because in real life, what really happens sometimes is that soldiers tend to daydream. They would have a snack. They would talk to their friends about how much they miss their girlfriend, and they have to propose when everything ends. A lot of wedding proposals started on those moments, and some fall asleep. Happened to me more than once, by the way, that I fell asleep in the middle of war, being woken up by a missile, shot in the background or a bullet somewhere. Not something rare that I'm describing to you. And the same thing happened with that team. About a mile away from us, that team is going down on the ground. They're looking for terrorists. Some of the people are kind of daydreaming. The same thing happens with the last guy in that column. He's falling asleep. The only problem is that when this guy opens his eyes, he realizes he's all alone. The procedure, the protocol is pretty clear. Before you start to walk again, you have to look back to make sure your brother is with you. This team probably did not follow the protocol, leaving that guy to sleep. I want you to realize what happened here. We're talking about a 19-year-old guy in the middle of war in Gaza, falling asleep, waking up, looking left, looking right, and he sees no one. He has no radio and no cell phone, no nothing. This is the nightmare of a lifetime. So this guy gets panicked. Who wouldn't, right? And he decides to run to the first place he remembers, which is our place. During that time, my teammate, one of my best friends, is looking at the door. He starts his night shift. Before he starts his night shift, he's taking a glass bottle and he breaks it at the entrance to the building. Any idea why he's doing that?
Noise.
Pardon?
Noise.
Exactly, for operational reasons. So if anyone would step on the glass fragments, he would have an advantage and the element of surprise. And at some point in the middle of the night, 2, 3 a.m., he hears someone steps on the glass fragments. He looks down, he sees a black figure with a gun screaming at him, "Hey, I'm IDF, don't shoot, don't shoot." Really? Hamas did the same thing 24 hours ago. Now, I can tell you as a lawyer now that my friend had any legal justification to take the shot for 3 main reasons. Number one, when this is happening, we got no indication on the radio about a lost soldier. As a matter of fact, when this is happening, he still continues to march like nothing happened. They have no idea they're missing one guy. Number two, we know Hamas is using that method of disguising to IDF soldier. And number three, you tell me, what is the reasonable action expected from a combat soldier that is being surprised in the middle of the night when he sees a figure and he cannot see any identification on the uniforms because it's completely dark and someone has a gun in front of him? I would probably take the shot. Do not be mistaken. Yes, friendly fire is a terrible, terrible incident. Yet this is just, I guess, part of the reality of whoever engages in this terrible phenomena called war. Yet my friend is a better soldier than me, probably. And he takes just one more second. He reaches out to the guy and he asks him, "Please relax, what is your name?" And the guy mumbles hysterically with literally tears in his eyes.
How did you see the tears when it started?
Because you can hear when someone speaks to you and he shakes with his voice. It's pretty obvious at that point. And the guy mumbles his name. "Who's your commander? What happened to you? What are you doing here?" And after 25, 30 seconds of a dialogue, he realizes he's not facing a disguised terrorist, but rather a true, authentic, lost soldier. He's taking the gun down, and he's reaching out to him and saying, "Hey, brother, you're safe now. You may come. You're with us." And the guy enters our apartment, crashes, again with tears, thanking us for not killing him. We're waking up thinking we're looking at a ghost. But the truth is that this guy is alive today because my friend applied higher standards than the legal ones. The following night, we celebrated Shabbat in that apartment. Until this very day, I remember the davening in that apartment. Something in the contradiction between the ancient texts of Kiddush, of Friday night davening, and the way we looked like 24th century robots with, you know, the lasers and stuff on our helmets, that was something that just was too hard to bear. And I'm not embarrassed to say, even until this day, that some of us were conducting this prayer with tears in our eyes, and it was one of the most emotional scenes of my life, which I'll never forget. Following day, we were transported back to Israeli territory for the first time. We slept more than 2 hours. We had a nice breakfast. Nice. Not Eggs Benedict, cucumber and cheese in military standards. And then we were transported back to the Gaza Strip again. But this time, not to a sand dune and not to a lousy apartment, but rather to a very nice villa, actually, inside the Gaza Strip. There are such places in Gaza, and you should know this. And I vividly remember walking inside that villa, and you could tell immediately that this is the creme de la creme of Gaza. The father of the family has a picture shaking the hand of late Yasser Arafat on the wall. There are diplomas in French and English on the wall. The kid, I remember the kid's room until this very day. The kid had a Sony PlayStation with a very impressive library of games, of FIFA, NFL, NBA. And I got to tell you, we were happy to be there. If you're in war, then at least be in a nice facility. We also noticed, however, that the family was kind of rushed when they left the villa because their laundry was still folded in a weird way on the sofa. Now think about it. What we usually do is that we fold laundry in front of the TV, right? And when we're done, we're taking it to the closet. But might have happened with that family is that they folded the laundry and then they got indication that the IDF is coming and they just left everything as it was. But we did not give that too much thought at the moment. We entered the living room and some of us crushed on the sofa. We wanted our backs to have some relief. It was literally broken at that point. And we started, you know, to find ourselves in the house and to search the house for bombs before beginning to operate from within the house. But after 10 minutes, our commander comes and says, guys, changing plans, we have to evacuate this place immediately. We were very mad. We wanted to stay there. But an order is an order, it is what it is, so we're standing in a line in front of the door and we're waiting to exit. And our commander comes and he says, wait, guys, not just yet. What do you want now? We're asking him. And he says, well, we got to bring this place just the way we got it. So we're replying, wait, we didn't steal anything. What are you talking about? It's not us. We'll never do that. He was like, no, of course not. I'm not talking about that. Look at the living room. Look at the mess. The entire laundry is on the floor because of you guys. So I'm finding myself at the age of 22 in the middle of Gaza folding laundry. Not in the best way. When my wife first heard that, she was like, do it at home finally. But literally folding laundry. Taking a note from this tiny notebook that I had with me. I do not speak Arabic, although my mother is an Arabic teacher. And I do not know if they speak Hebrew, but I assume I had a pretty good sense that they speak English. So I took a note and I wrote to the family. Sorry for the mess. May peace come upon us, Israeli Special Forces. And I left the note on the laundry and we left that villa. Now, I always share that laundry story not because it's challenging like the human shield story, and not because it's frightening like the disguised terrorist one, and not because it's unbelievable like the almost friendly fire incident my friend experienced. I'm sharing that story because to me, it stresses the simple notion that we as soldiers in every military are not just dealing with collateral damages. We're dealing with human beings. And we're taking that job very, very seriously. Very seriously. Now, do not be mistaken. We are not perfect. You're not going to hear that from me. That's going to be a blunt disrespect to your intelligence. As a matter of fact, you cannot be perfect when you're dealing with war. War is a dirty business. Yet, when mistakes happen, and they do from time to time, we investigate. We press charges. We indict. We do anything in our power to make sure that these wrongdoings are not happening again, and they maintain as the exception and not the general custom. And we're not just doing that because of them, by the way. Again, do not be fooled. when they were doing that also because of us. Not to lose who we are. Because, and remember that, I believe that there is a direct link between the way a nation conducts its warfare and the way it conducts its society. If we were to be barbarians on the battlefield just because we can, these norms will be integrated into our civilian lives, particularly in Israel, where we're a military of our own people. We do not have a professional military. Those norms will be integrated into our civilian lives, harms our society, our checks and balances, and that, my friends, that would be the end of the Zionist project as we know it today. Thank you so much for coming and listening. And if you have any questions, I'm more than open to hear them. Thank you.